Hey, what's up, y'all? What's going on? I wanted to make you a quick video going over the quiz that you took last Friday. I'm going to go through each problem because it was randomized. Some of y'all had problems, so some of these problems won't apply to you. Some will. All right. I'm just going to show you what the correct answer was. All right. So let's get started. So right here we have cosine 345, guys, for this first problem right here. And we got to find whether you use some more difference right here. All right. So cosine of 345, I'm actually going to do cosine of 300 plus cosine. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I wrote cosine of 300 and then cosine again. I'm going to do cosine of 300 plus 45. All right. So real quick, let me post a unit circle up here. So as you see right here, cosine of 300 is 1/2, and then cosine of 300. Sine of 300 is negative radical 3/2, and then sine and cosine for 45 right here is the same, negative radical 3/2. So we have cosine of 300. Well, let me write it down real quick. 300 is 1/2. Negative radical 3/2. All right, let me make sure I wrote that right. 1/2 negative. Okay, good. So cosine of 300, cosine of 45 minus sine of 300. Sine. So this is gonna give us the cosine of 300 is 1/2. The cosine right here is going to be 45 is radical 2/2. The sine of 300 is negative radical 3/2. All right, I'll put that negative right there, and then radical 2/2. This right here gives me radical 2/4. You and I. This right here gives me a positive, so that's a positive radical 3/2. It's going to be a positive radical 6/4, right? So we end up with radical 2 plus radical 6/4. So if you look at it, right, even if you did radical 6 plus radical 2/4, same thing, which is right here. All right, of course, it won't be the double negative. It won't be a minus. There's no negative. All right, so here's your answer right here. All right, again, we got sine of 345. So we have, we're going to do sine of 300 plus 45 again. And remember, 300 is the point of negative radical 3/2. All right. So when we solve this one, sine of 300, cosine of 45 plus cosine of 300, and then sine of 45. I completely agree. Now, why did I put 300 is 300? So sine of 300 is negative radical 3/2 times radical 2/2 plus sine of 300 is 1/2 radical 2/2. So that gives me a negative radical 6/4. This is going to be a radical 2/4. So that's you can have negative radical 6 plus radical 2/4, or you can have radical 2 minus radical 6/4. But regardless, it's the same exact thing, okay? And so that would have been one option right here, this one. This one right here, because the radical 6 is what must be negative, okay? All right, right here it says use the sum and difference formulas to determine the exact value of this expression. Well, look right here, guys. We have sine of 247, cosine of 187, minus cosine of 247, sine of 187. All right, so guys, these values are not on the unit circle, but what we can try to do is condense this. All right, and in doing so, if you see what we have is sine, cosine minus cosine, sine. Well, which rule is that? Where you have sine, cosine minus cosine, sine. That is going to be sine of 247 minus 187. All right. So what we do is we subtract that 247 minus 187, That's going to give us 60. So this is really sine of 60. So now what we do is we go to our unit circle. So if you look right here at 60, you see the sine value, the y value is radical 3 over 2. So sine of 60 is radical 3 over 2, which we saw in the unit circle. Alright, for this one. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use the sum of distance formula to determine the exact value of this expression. Now this one, we got cosine, cosine, plus sine, sine. Now 295 north 55 is on the unit circle, so we're going to condense this. So you have cosine of 295, cosine of 55, plus sine of 295, sine of 55, plus this is going to be cosine of 295 minus 55, okay? So we do the math on that, 295 minus 55, that gives us 240, cosine of 240. So what that means we need to do is go to our unit circle, and we look at our unit circle right here, 240, what is cosine? Negative 1/2. Negative 1/2, which is down here, man. I know you can't see it, but negative 1/2 is right here. All right, right here it says use the sum and difference. All right, use the sum and difference formulas to determine the exact values of this expression. So right here, guys, we're going to expand this. Well, actually, no. I want to take this before I expand it. Let's convert that. So we need to convert that to a degree. So if I do 19 pi over 12 times 180 over pi, that's going to give me 19 times 180. It's going to be 3,420. And then we're going to divide that by 12 because the pi's cancel. That divided by 12 is going to be 285. So we're going to look at 285 degrees. All right. So we need to find two angles that are multiplied to give us 285. So we could do, let's say, here, let's pull up a unit circle. So we're going to do 240 plus 45. So what we need to do before we start this is let's find tangent of 240. All right, so again, if I go to we see that this is negative 1/2, negative radical 3 over 2, and radical 2 and radical 2 over 4. I mean radical 2 over 2 and radical 2 over 2. So we said this is a negative 1/2, negative radical 3 over 2. So what we got to do is do sine over cosine, which we keep change flip, right? And that'll give me, we flip this one, right? Flip this, right? The 2's and the negatives cancel, and I'm left with radical 3, right? Just radical 3. And then, of course, tangent of 45 equals 1. So here we go. We're going to do tangent of A plus B. It's going to be tangent A plus tangent B all over 1 minus tangent A times tangent B, right? So radical 3 times 1 is radical 3. So we have radical 3 plus 1 all over 1 minus radical 3, which is going to be radical 3 plus 1 minus radical 3, option B right here. Alright, for this one, same type problem. First, we're going to convert 11 pi over 2. So that is 11 pi over 2 times 180 over pi. Alright, that's 180. Sorry about that. So 11 times 180 divided by, that's 12. Divided by 12. That's going to be 165, so 165 degrees. So we need two angles that'll make 165. So let's look at our unit circle. So how about 120 and 45? All right, let's do 120 and 45. I know somebody's like 135 and 1 and 30, but we try to avoid this one. All right, we try to avoid that angle right there. So let's do 120 and 45. All right. So negative 1/2 radical 3 over 2 for 120. All right. So tan of 120 equals negative 1/2 radical 3 over 2. right? Sine over cosine gives us a keep change flip, so times 2 over 1, negative, gives us a negative radical 3. And of course, 1/2 tan of 45, excuse me, is 1. So we have, we're going to do 120 plus 45. So we have tan of 120 plus 1 all over 1 minus tan of 120 times 1, right? So negative radical 3 plus 1 all over, that's negative radical 3 times this negative is a positive, so 1 plus radical 3. So here we go, which answer is this? Negative radical 3, 1 plus negative radical 3 plus 1. So this one right here, because it's radical 3 plus 1, negative radical 3 plus 1, right? Right here. Just mind your signs, okay? With respect to your signs. Alright. This one right here, it says find cosine of u plus v. If cosine of u is negative 3 over 5 in the third quadrant. So real quick, we got u, cosine is negative 3 over 5. So Pythagorean theorem, this is going to give me a negative 4. Why negative 4? Because look, it's going down. This is going down. All right. Negative x, negative y. So negative 4 right there. And then the other one, we have v. All right, v sine is negative 5 because it's going down over 13. 13 squared is 169. 169 minus 25 is going to be 144, so this is going to be negative 12. Why negative 12? Because see the y-axis? I'm on the left side of the y-axis, so this is negative. All right, so we have, what are we looking for? Cosine of u plus v. So we're going to do cosine of u, cosine of v minus sine u, sine v. Alright, so cosine of u is negative 3 over 5. Cosine v is negative 12 over 13. Sine of u is going to be negative 5 over 4. I'm sorry, negative 4 over 5. Good night. And sine of v is negative 5 over 13. Like that. So, right, negative is a positive, so that's going to be 36 over 65. And again, negative is a positive, but there's negative here, so that positive becomes a negative. Excuse me, so negative 20 over 65. So that will give me a final answer of 36 minus 20 is 16 over 65. So you will literally put that 16 divided by 65 right here. Okay. Again, the negatives cancel. Make sure you respect this, guys. Like negative x, negative y, negative x, negative y. If I was over here somewhere, right, it'd be positive x, negative y. So this would be positive a, this would be negative b, whatever that is right there, you know. Even if you was in the third quadrant, the second quadrant, right? Negative x, positive b, right? Hypotenuse is always positive. But make sure you know this for your test, okay? All right, this one right here. So find sine of u plus v is cosine of u is in quadrant 3. So again, cosine of u is in quadrant 3. So quadrant 3, we got u and cosine is negative 3 over 5, which means that's a negative 4. Negative y value, right? And then sine of v is in quadrant 1. So quadrant 1 for v, and v is 5 over 13, and this would be 12. So now we have sine of v. So sine of v, I'm sorry, find sine of u plus v. So it's going to be sine of u times cosine of v, so 5 over 13. Cosine, sorry y'all. It's late, I'm sleepy. Bear with me, my apologies. So 12 over 13. It says plus, right? Sine of u plus v. So plus cosine of u, so negative over 5. And then sine of v is going to be 5 over 13. So this right here gives me a negative 48 over 65. And this negative 3 times 5 is negative 15 over 65. So negative and a negative, that's going to give me a negative 48, 58, 63. Negative 63 over 65. So negative 63, 65. Like that. So now let's look at this one. Oh, this one, man. So notice these didn't change, right? Because we were verifying. So we were trying to get sine of theta the entire time. Alright. But the rest of this is just matching. So this is sine of theta plus 1. Sine of theta plus pi. So we have sine of theta, cosine of pi, cosine of theta, sine of pi, right? And so now we have sine of theta, cosine of pi. Well, cosine of pi, remember pi, guys, has the coordinate point negative 1, 0. So cosine of pi would be negative 1. And then sine of pi is 0. Alright? And if you change that, then you'll end up with this. You just work it out and plug in the blanks like that. Alright. Same thing right here. For this one, again, notice the cosines didn't change. We're just verifying that this side equals this right side. So we have cosine of theta minus pi. So cosine of theta, cosine of pi, sine of theta, sine of pi. Now, what is cosine of pi? Remember, pi, again, has that coordinate point of negative 1, 0. So cosine of pi is negative 1. Sine of pi, or right here, sine of pi is 0. Alright. Alright, likewise right here. 3 pi over 2. Alright, 3 pi over 2 is, look at these. Alright, 3 pi over 2 is right here. So 0, negative 1. Right? So doing the same thing, you have sine of x plus 3 pi over 2, or you have sine of x, cosine 3 pi over 2, cosine of x, sine of 3 pi over 2. Alright. Now cosine of 3 pi over 2, cosine is 0. And sine of 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. Alright. Likewise for this one right here. Pi over 2. Remember pi over 2, which is 90 degrees, is 0, 1. So this is cosine. So you have cosine x, cosine of pi over 2, plus sine of x. Man, you know what? I just noticed the mistake. Let me see something. Yep, I just noticed the mistake. This right here, that should be a negative. If that's a plus, that's a negative. But still, the blanks don't change. Alright? Let's be cosine of pi over 2 minus sine of x, sine of pi over 2. 1, 2. And then cosine of pi over 2 is 0. And sine of pi over 2 is 1. Like that. Alright, this one right here, find all the solutions of the following interval in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. So we need to expand this one and this one. To expand that one, you're going to have cosine of x, cosine of pi over 6, minus sine of x, sine of pi over 6. And then we have this plus right here. So x minus pi over 6. So cosine of x, cosine of pi over 6 plus sine of x, sine of pi over 6. Now, real quick. Now, pi over 6 has a radical 3 over 2, 1/2. Right? No. So, guys, cosine of pi over 6 right here is going to be radical 3 over 2. So this is radical 3 over 2 times cosine of x. And then sine of pi over 6 is going to be 1/2. So this is 1/2 times negative sine. Alright. And then right here, cosine of pi over 6 is radical 3 over 2. So that's radical 3 over 2 cosine of x. And then right here you have sine of pi over 6, which is 1/2. So 1/2 sine of x. Now, can anything cancel? Yeah. Right here. Negative sine, negative 1/2 sine, and positive 1/2 sine. Right? So I have radical 3 over 2 plus radical 3 over 2. So it's going to be 2 radical 3 over 2, because that's 1 radical 3 over 2 plus 1 radical 3 over 2, which is 2 radical 3 over 2. Cosine x equals 0. Anyway, that cancels, right? So I have radical 3 cosine x equals 0. And then I'm going to divide by radical 3 on both sides. So cosine x equals 0. 0 divided by radical 3 is 0. So where does cosine x equals 0? So you have pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2, because remember cosine is the x value, and for these 2 points this is pi over 2, so 0 up 1, and this is 3 pi over 2, 0 negative 1. So you should have checked both of these right here. All right, those two answers right there. Too much time on your hands. Not y'all. So on this one, let's see here. Same thing. All right. So this time, the order switches up a little bit. So we have cosine of x, cosine of pi over 6, plus sine of x, sine of pi over 6. So right here we have the minus sign, right? And so now we have cosine of x, cosine of pi over 6, minus sine of x, sine of pi over 6. Now, why did I put these parentheses right here? Because of this negative. So everything after this must get multiplied by that negative. So when I expand this, it still has to get multiplied by the negative. So real quick, let me write this over.
Nigga, you played that boy.
I told you that was gonna happen. Hold on. And this will become a plus. Alright, so now you have to distribute that. So negative, which I have negative, and positive, which is right here. Now, well, cosine of x times, remember cosine pi over 6. Pi over 6 is 1, 2, 3. Radical 3 over 2, 1/2, right? So we have, you have radical 3 over 2, so radical 3 over 2, cosine of x. Right here, this is 1/2, this is 1/2, so 1/2 sine of x. Alright, this right here is radical 3 over 2, that's radical 3 over 2, so negative radical 3 over 2 cosine of x. And this right here is 1/2, so 1/2 sine of x. And that equals 0. Now, if you look, this is going to cancel with this one because 1 is positive, 1 negative. And I have 1/2 plus 1/2 is actually 1. So 1 sine of x equals 0. So what is sine of x equals 0? So where's the y value 0? Well, you have right here pi, which is negative 1, 0. So that's 0. And you have 0 pi, right? Because this is 1, 0. So 0 pi and pi. All right, we got about 3 more. Actually, my fault. We don't have 3 more. We have 1 more. And this is the last one right here. So in this one, we got 5 tangent of x plus pi plus 2 tan of x plus pi equals 0. So real quick, pi for tangent, you know, this point is 0. I'm sorry, negative 1 comma 0. So tangent would be 0 over negative 1, which is 0. So we're gonna expand this right here. So we have 5 times tan of x plus tan of pi all over 1 minus tan of x times tan of pi plus 2 times tan of x plus tan of pi all over 1 minus tan x times tan of pi. Let me rewrite this real quick because it's terrible. So right here, tan of x, this is 0. So we have tan of x. Let me just write it all the way out so you can see it. So we have 5 times tan x plus 0 all over 1 minus tan x times 0, right? Then over here we have 2 times tan x plus 0 all over 1 minus tan x times 0. Alright, now why 0? Again, because tangent of pi is 0. So where we have tangent of pi, this is 0, this is 0, this is 0, this is 0, what you see right here. Now we have 5 times tan, this is tangent. Alright, this tangent times 0 is 0. So you just have 1 at the bottom. This right here is tangent. And then right here, this is 0. Tangent times 0 is 0. So 1 minus 0 is 1. So anyway, keeping it going, tangent over 1 is just tangent. So I have 5 tan plus 2 tan. And remember, all this equals 0, right? So 5 plus 2 is 7 tan. So 7 tan x equals 0. And now just divide by 7 on both sides. You get 0. Tan x equals 0. So now what is tangent equals 0? Well, we already got one of the answers, right? Right here. Tangent of pi. So pi. And what's the other one? Where else do you have tangent of pi? Well, remember 0 pi is the point 1, 0. So tangent would be 0 over 1, which is 0. So it'll also be this one right here. 0 pi and pi. Anyway, man, yo, I hope this clears it up. I'm sorry I went well over 25 minutes, well over 20 minutes. But I hope this helps. I'll catch you later.